I'm talking to Rosie Acosta today, who is a world-renowned yoga and meditation teacher, a yoga teacher training, and holistic health coach. She is also the founder of Radically Loved Yoga, Health, and Wellness, and host of the top-rated iTunes podcast, Radically Loved, with over 1 million downloads. She is a national ambassador for Yoga Journal and has been featured on the cover as well. Oh, the list goes on, and I'm just so grateful to be connecting with you today. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I'm so glad that we were able to make this I think we've been trying to chat for it feels like a year, but I know we've had to overcome a lot of scheduling hurdles, and I'm so glad that we made this happen. Thank you for having me.
Yes, yeah, the timing is really wonderful. You know, we're just entering a new year, and I feel like it looks different than ever before after, such a big year of changes. So just wanted to ask you, how do you feel about the new year? Are you one to make a lot of New Year's intentions? How are you going into 2021?
Oh, we're just diving right in. Okay. Yeah, that it's hard because for me it doesn't really feel like it feels different, but it doesn't, there's something about the energy of the turn of a new chapter that feels substantial, that feels like almost tangible. And I don't necessarily feel that. Maybe it's because of this, being at home and everything is kind of the same and not going out. And I'm in Los Angeles and we're like a huge, massive surge of coronavirus. And so everything's shut down again. So it definitely feels a little bit different. But to answer your question, I always set an intention for the beginning of the year. I try to establish a word, but I don't establish my word until probably closer to the end of January, because I give myself the opportunity to just feel into the year and see what comes up. If I set an intention before I get to meet the new year, I feel like I set myself up for having expectation, and I just don't like to do that. I used to live my life setting so many intentions and so many goals that I became way more familiar with the disappointment, and I just decided that I didn't want to feel disappointed anymore. So I just stopped having expectation, you know?
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like the pace, it's interesting that you bring that up because I feel like the pace for this year is a little bit different. It's for me at least, it's easing in a little bit more and taking it all in and what does this year have in store? It's just feels a little bit different energy.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. It definitely does feel like, um, it's allowing us to integrate a little bit more fluidly, you know, even though, things are still crazy. It's almost like we've gone through the trauma of the upheaval of what 2020 was. And now we're just maybe we have PTSD and we're just like, oh, this is actually not that bad, you know?
Right, right. Yeah, it is an adjustment. I feel like the learnings and the takeaways have been different for everyone, but there are these kind of commonalities that we've all gone through and collectively shared. So for you, what have been some of the greatest takeaways and lessons from the past year?
Ooh, yeah. So I had to really go into a special place within myself to adjust, because I spend 80% of the year traveling, and obviously that wasn't happening. So it was a major environmental adjustment of being home, because for me, being home in my mind equates resting and hanging out and eating whatever and hanging out with Tori and playing with the dogs and just being in a chill phase. And so obviously this chill phase lasted a really long time. So I had to one of the things that I really learned was that I could still continue to create and function at home, because so much of my belief was I can't work while I'm at home. I always get my best work done when I'm traveling, or if I'm on an airplane, or if I'm in a hotel somewhere. I was writing a book last year, which was, I think, a huge blessing to be able to just be in one place, because I can't imagine how I would have tackled that feat had I been traveling as much as I normally was. So to answer your question, I think what I learned was that I am highly adaptable, that I can adapt to any situation. And, I've always been adaptable my entire life. I mean, much of my history is been rooted in the ability to adapt, but it's great to know that almost at 40 years old, I can still manage to do it. So that was a good lesson.
Yeah, I know. I think for many of us is the changes and the resiliency to be able to like adjust. It doesn't even seem possible when you think about it on the surface, and then yet somehow here we all are.
Yeah, I mean, it's like how was it for you, like, to be able to adapt and adjust last year? Like, what was the most poignant thing that you experienced in adapting last year?
For me, it was such a wonderful opportunity to go within, because I have had a tendency throughout my life to be like go go go, and I definitely didn't travel quite as much as you, but I didn't really have the space to expand and really have ample time to really like do this like deep inner work, and that for that I'm so grateful. Yeah, so
Yeah, I mean, inner work. Oh, I'm sorry. We got cut
that.
out. The inner work seemed to have, like, the glory of Zoom, right? We're all just so used to being delayed or talked over with technology. I'm super grateful that we have technology, but I'm also still like a little bit resistant that that's the way we have to interact, but that's, a separate topic. But yeah, so I'm going to go back to what you said about the internal work and how we were able to have that space to do that last year. I feel like a lot of the lesson in 2020 was about creating that spaciousness and creating an opportunity to inquire within, and to really just go into a state of reflection of what you want your life to be and what you want to focus on and where you want your energy to go, and how does that play into the grander vision of the society and the community that you're in.
I 1000% agree. And I feel like, sometimes there's a tendency to feel as if we must be busy or to, fill the time. And I just think that, at least my personal experience is to have a little bit more spaciousness in the day. So much magic happens, so much like greater levels of awareness. That has been like my takeaway or aha from the past year for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is where the deepest connections to your highest happen, in those moments of stillness or in that space. It's the place, like the subtle suspension of the breath, when you're in complete sync with yourself, your body, your mind, your spirit, your heart, and you can really focus in that spaciousness where you can feel the most connected to yourself and to everybody around you.
Yeah. What practices for you allow for the greatest connection or, feeling?
Hmm. So I have a very, how do I say, I don't want to say rigid or militant, but I'm very disciplined in my morning ritual. Like, I have a very specific practice that I do and I've done for years and years now. And I just don't know who I would be if I didn't do them. And it's not, I used to do this thing where I'd wake up at 4:45 in the morning and I would, do some breath work, and I would do my neti pot, and I would do all the things, scrape my tongue and wash my face and do a little bit of movement. And then I would sit and meditate for an hour and a half. And then I would do some asana, some yoga postures, and then I would go for a run, or I would spin, or I would do something. And like, that was really hardcore, and it served me very well, but that's definitely changed in the last year. So that's actually one thing that I will continue to do after what happened in 2020 is my body needed to rest more. It needed to sleep more. It needed to practice more yoga nidra. It needed to create more space for rest and for self-care and self-love. And so my morning ritual is still the same. I'm not as, hardcore about getting up at 4:45. Now it's, I try to wake up with the sun, whenever the sun starts to come up. Typically my body starts to wake up around 5:30, 5:45. And then I give myself an opportunity to really integrate into the day. That moment between sleep and awake where you start to remember who you are.
Mm.
You're integrating into this life, into this spaciousness, into this body. That is the most magical time of the day for me. And to be able to experience that and be very aware of that moment, it puts you in a deep state of connection. It's that moment between the between theta and the alpha state that takes you into beta. So beta is you're awaking, taking in information right now, what we're doing. Alpha is the minute that you close your eyes, your senses are heightened. Sight, sound, or not sight, but sound, taste, thought. You go inside, and that is the state where meditation happens, and you go deeper and deeper, obviously with theta, delta, and then gamma. But in that state between awake and asleep is a really beautiful, it's a really, really beautiful moment. And if I were to say like what my ritual is, I'm not going to go into, oh, this is the type of pranayama that I practice, or these are the poses that I do, or this is how long I meditate. It's really just being aware of that moment and just remembering, oh, this is that moment, and the minute that you try to make something. So when we are in that space, we are highly susceptible to, how do I say, planting new seeds. In that state of, when you're in deep relaxation, you go into the hardware of the mind, into the subconscious, and you can plant things. You can create a new vision or a new mantra or just new things for your life that you want to create. And it's such a beautiful moment to be able to do that. That's why there's so many fun and cool little things that you can do in the morning. You can do morning pages. You can do, gratitude journal. You can meditate first thing that you do. What you don't want to do is get on your phone the first thing you wake up, or like go check your computer the first thing that you wake up, or go into, I don't want to do this, or like I have this call, or it's that you don't want to infiltrate your subconscious mind with something that's not going to serve your highest good. So does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah, I love that so much. And it's so true how our morning sets the whole pace for the entire day. And I love how you carve out so much time, even with so many things that, you have going on and, priorities. It's like you still block off and really make yourself a priority. What about being in a relationship? For anybody who has not listened to your recent episode with your partner, I highly encourage them to do so. I loved it. And, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about was just like being in a relationship for, such a long period of time, and especially like from a younger age, like navigating, there's just an immense amount of growth
Mhm.
and change that takes place.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah. And, how has that experience been for you?
Yeah, it's so funny. I never ever get asked about my relationship. Like it's so funny that that episode was definitely one of the highlights of the year, because it's really hard for me to get him to record anything with me. But when I do, it's always fun to just hear his processing. Yeah, Tori and I have been together for 18 years. I've known him for closer to 20, and we started dating. I was very young. I was 20. And so yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, to see your partner grow and evolve, and to be able to go through the trials and tribulations of being in a relationship. And one of the things that I say, and interestingly enough, I wrote about this in my book, and in one of the last chapters, how I believe that the ultimate spiritual practice that we can do is to be in relationship, and to be in relationship with somebody that we love, because it really shows us our blind spots, and it really shows us who we are. And it's such a wild ride. I mean, I always say this, but I think that, and Tori is not a yogi. He's not like into the world of self-development. Like he is like a creative, and he is just, this is not his world. And in the beginning of my journey, I was, in my mid 20s, early 20s, and he was kind of like, whatever, you're going to do whatever you want, and he was supportive. But a couple years in, the closer I got to 30, I was like, well, I can't be with somebody who's not into doing spiritual work. I can't be with somebody who is not willing to go within and explore and have a spiritual practice. And that was a huge source of contention for us, because his spiritual practice didn't look like mine. And at that age, and my lack of knowledge, I couldn't see that it was just different. And I couldn't accept the fact that it was different. I just didn't see what I wanted to see. And so I created an issue for us. Um, and you surround yourself with people who are there to uplift you. And at the time, I had a group of friends that were really sort of egging this idea on about him not wanting to convert, or something. And so they were just like, well, I don't know, you really have to think about if he is the right person for you, because how could you be with somebody who doesn't want to evolve? And I think that's a very egocentric way of looking at things, because why do I get to determine how somebody evolved spiritually, especially the person that I love, who we've had such a beautiful relationship and such a loyal and trusting and incredible relationship, but this was just the one thing that I couldn't let go of. And so I finally got to a place where I had to do that work. The work that I wanted him to do, I had to do it myself. And it took us getting to an ultimatum space where I had to, draw a line in the sand. And it was that sort of intensity where I really had to ask myself, what is it that I'm really looking for here? Like, why is it that so me not having this from my partner means that this relationship is not good for me? Like, how is that even, how can I prove that? I kind of use the Byron Katie method of, is that true? Is that the truth? And who am I without that truth? And who am I with that truth? And it made me realize, wow, like, I'm willing to throw away this incredible relationship with this incredible person because he won't go to a yoga workshop with me. Like, I don't understand. And fortunately, we were able to move past that hurdle. And not to say, look, we have issues just like everybody else. We fight not all the time, but like we have our things, you know, we know how to push each other's buttons after 18 years. We know exactly what to do and what to say to get to each other and to ultimately get each other to do what we want. So, and that's just what a relationship is. It's that constant dance of compromise. And going back to what I was saying about the ultimate spiritual practice, I feel that for us to really be able to grow and evolve and see each other for who and what we really are, we have to sometimes move through that suffering, move through that change, move through that growth, because it's in those moments that we really show up as who and what we are. And so one of my teacher always says that when you're dating somebody and you're getting to know them in the beginning, it's always fun and exciting, right? The first 6 months are always it's just you dating yourself, because you feel so good, and it's like they make you feel this type of way, and you're just really focusing on your own feelings. You're not focusing on, oh, I met this person and I make him feel so good and so confident and I'm so excited. It's like, I feel great, I feel butterflies, and I feel so excited when I'm around this person. And it's just about you. It's about me, 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 right? So it's like that thing about kids, like the most selfish people on the planet, because they're just thinking about themselves all the time. And I feel like when we're in relationship, we turn into that. We revert to that childlike excitement and enthusiasm, which is which is great. But there's a point where then you have to meet each other halfway and really get to know the person and explore what type of lesson or lessons this person is there to teach you, and how willing are you to take those lessons, and how is this helping your highest good. And if it's not helping your highest good, then obviously you're not in the right relationship, um, in my opinion. But I think that ultimately we're constantly changing, we're constantly evolving. And so having an opportunity and having the experience of being in a relationship with a romantic partner or with a friend, it gives us a great chance to see who and what we're made of, you know.
That is profoundly beautiful. I love that so much. And, you know, I feel like it's going to hit a chord. I know it does with me, but like for anybody that's listening, especially that's on a spiritual path, you know, because there is that checking in of your partner and like, oh, he's not into meditating or she's not
Yes.
into,
I mean, did you go
connecting with
through
my
this?
guides.
Yeah. Did you go through the same thing with your partner?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, because I feel like, sometimes I'll talk to him about like the woo and the out there and the, and sometimes I do it just to like test him and see like what his reaction will be,
Yeah.
and it's really fun. And what I love about him is that, he's very like focused, and he has a different kind of energy that he carries in the day to day, and which I think like you're talking about is like that difference,
Yeah.
that I definitely have like checked in, but he's always open to
Mm.
what I'm doing and appreciative of the space that I've created for myself to do that deeper spiritual work. And so like when I come back to evaluating, it's like the respect that I really, really appreciate.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately you have to be in alignment with the same values. You have to want the same outcome. You might want different things, and often in relationships, two individuals might want two different things, but I think there has to be a foundation, there has to be a commonality, there has to be respect, there has to be space, there has to be understanding, there has to be compassion, there has
Mm.
to be kindness in order for us to really take those lessons in and be open to exploring something new, you know.
So how have you and your partner navigated, I know you mentioned like spending quite a bit more time at home this year, like any, and I think for, for a lot of us that are in relationship, it's like, navigating that space of spending, not really necessarily having the structured date night or what have you.
Yeah.
Any rituals that you guys have?
Yeah, it's really it's such a difficult question, because it really just depends on the day. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. It was very hard for me to be at home with him. I like being away from him because it makes me miss him. It's kind of a weird thing when I'm not home. I just miss him so much, and I'm just so grateful for him, and I just want to be with him. And I daydream about us going on a date or hanging out, and I still very much after all this time get excited about hanging out with him. And the problem with being readily accessible is that that doesn't happen. So and for me, like, I need alone time. I need to have my space. I mean, you know what I do for a living, so I'm constantly just on that. When I'm off, I need to be off and alone. I need to just have space. And so now, like, so we were able to build my little office detached from the house. So that was like step one. But maybe other people might not have the ability to do that. So what I always suggest is to go to the opposite end. So that this wasn't here forever. I didn't have this. This is a recent development. I would say this happened towards the beginning of the fall of last year. So the beginning of the year, it was just us in the same small house, with 2 and sometimes 3 dogs, because we have like a stepdaughter. She's a little pitty. I love her. Her name's Rosie. And so we would just create the space opposite ends of the house where it's like, okay, let's give each other the space and let's have lunch together. So some of the rituals that we would do is we have breakfast together, we have lunch together, and we have dinner together. And we don't have any electronics or any technology. No technology is invited to any meal ever.
Love that.
And yeah, and we don't discuss anything negative while we're eating, regardless of what it is, whether it's, oh, I just read this article, or can you believe what's going on, and all what's happening in the world. We very methodically do not. We talk about something we're excited about, or what we're planning, or what's going on with his work, or what's going on with my work, and it just keeps us in this space of excitement and connection, as opposed to going down a path of, oh, this is not going to work. And we're really great at communicating. If I'm having a bad day, or if I'm really crabby, I make it known. I say, hey, I'm having a crabby day today, and I'd really like to be left alone. So when I'm ready, I will come find you. And he normally respects that. And if he's wanting to be a jerk, he'll poke the bear, and he gets the result that he deserves. It happens. And look, we, again, like I said, we can all relate. So having the meals together is a great way for us to just, and all 3 meals sometimes don't happen. Sometimes it's just breakfast and dinner, or sometimes it's just lunch and dinner, or sometimes he's working late and I'm still working, so maybe we have dinner separately. But we try to at least have 1 meal a day together, and we give each other the space, we communicate. And we used to do this. I mean, this was before COVID, but we would do a date night once a week, or if I was in town, we would go out, and at least 1 meal that week we would try and make it special. But being as that is not happening in Los Angeles, we had to just get creative with having like a movie night or watching something together, because again, we have 2 entrepreneurs living in the house, 2 people working from home. We have to be very methodical about intentional about
Yes.
spending the time together and spending the time apart, which I feel like is super helpful. So Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't have anything figured out, you guys. I mean, like this is just you got to figure it out for yourself. You know, those of you that are listening to this or watching this, you really have to ask yourself like what are the things in your relationship that you enjoy the most, and what are the things that could potentially create a divergence of energy, like what can
Mm,
set you off the path. And when you can identify those things, then you can create your own ritual, your own way of connecting with your partner that's going to really serve you. You know, we were fortunate enough to find what serves us, and it works, you know. But again, I'm going to caveat that by saying that we absolutely have had hard times, and there's been times where it feels very uh, hard and catastrophic, but we seem to have that same goal. The end goal is to just be together and to try our best to be happy, not make each other happy, but be happy.
yes. What have you found? You know, I know like the spirituality piece was like something that you were looking at, but like what have you found to be those core essential pieces, those elements that, you know, keep you sort of glued together?
Oh, um honesty is number one. Respect is number two. It's in no particular order. You know, all three are important. And I would probably just say compassion, because I think seeing and experiencing his compassion when I'm in a deep state of suffering gives me the security that I need to know that I am in the right place,
Mm,
you know. And the same is with the uh honesty. It's like I know that he will always be honest with me, and he knows that I will, unfortunately, to a fault, will always be honest with him. um and respecting each other, respecting each other's boundaries, respecting each other's time, respecting each other's just humanness is also a key element. So I would say that those three things are the biggest pillars in our relationship. And you know, I've said this to him in the past. You know, I feel like I love him so much that I sometimes wish he wasn't my boyfriend, you know, because I'm like, oh, there's just so much pressure in being in a romantic relationship that I'm like, I wish you were just like my number one, like, person of all time, you know. And then he says something shitty, and then I'm like, oh right, you're human, just kidding, you can be my boyfriend, I guess. But it's that thing where you don't ever want to idolize your partner, and I definitely don't. He is so flawed, and so am I. But I really respect him as a person and as a human, and as just his own individual spirit body moving through this realm. And I feel like that's important when you're in a relationship.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I love that so much. I wasn't even planning on asking you about relationships, but I feel
Oh
like
no, that's great.
yeah, yeah, and you know, I just love how real and down to earth you are. And one of the things that you know, we were chatting about a little bit before we started recording was just like this energy of like groundedness and peacefulness that you give off. And I know that you have lots of balls in the air that you're juggling, and you're, you know, in the process of writing a book, and that can be a lot, right? And so just wondering, like, for you, when you have all these things that you want to do and create and put forward in the world, still at the same time like remaining rooted in, you know, a bit of like tranquility almost.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no, I have a meltdown at least once a day for sure. It's so interesting to see or to hear people, you know, that feel that I am a very grounding and calm presence, or that I can, you know, navigate through this world in this way. But you know, I suffered from debilitating panic attacks. Like that's part of what led me to this place. And I just have to continue to remind myself that it's okay, that everything is okay, that I'm in a safe place, and that I don't have to do everything. In fact, sometimes when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I have to really just pull the plug and just stop and give myself an opportunity to just breathe, you know. I can always tell when that's coming because I've been conditioned. I conditioned myself to know what it's like to to feel when the plate is too full,
Mhm.
that I can see it coming. We all can. Everybody here, we all know when it's like you're getting to that place where it is too much. Yet we continue to push ourselves over the edge just to what produce. And I'm just not about that life anymore. I'm really not. And I have to just always ask myself, like, what is the end? What is the end to all of this? Like, does it really matter? And is this worth your peace? Is this worth your connection to yourself? Is this worth your health? Is this worth your relationships that you're not making time for? And most of the time, no, it takes something really big to be worth that. So I have to create that space within my environment, within myself, to just be, it's just really be good about setting those boundaries, you know. To me, being grounded and being rooted is me being in connection to the slowing down,
Yeah.
and right, and the space that we're in, because it's in that slowing that you can really see things for what they are. You can't see them when you're frantically running around like a chicken with your head cut off. When people are just wound up so tight that
Mhm.
they're gripping, you're contracted, you're not able to take a deep breath and just look at something through clear and present eyes. So I feel like for me, the only way that I can be in that state is to give myself the space. I can be in that state if I give myself the space to be still and to be slow and to not try to do everything. You know, I've gotten a lot better about it in the last year. Maybe that's one of the great things that happened in 2020 for me, was I was able to be like, okay, like that's not important, or yeah, it doesn't matter. Oh, no, I don't have to do this, or no, I get to do the things that I want to do because at the end of the day, I want to do them, and I'm not. There's the sort of rat race of I got to produce, or this person's doing this, so that means I got to do a course too, or I have to do this, or I have to go speak on the stage too, or I have to go be at that conference, or you know, it's like all that shit is like, no, I don't have to do it. Why? Because if I do it, what does that mean? Does that mean I'm validated? Does that mean that now I'm important? Does that mean now I'm unique? And now I go back to saying what I was saying earlier, is that part of what the rat race is for us when we're younger is like, I want to work so hard so I can be unique and I can be different. And ultimately, we're not different. You know, we're all just spokes on a wheel where the center is our soul and our humanness, our how are we most alike, our
Mhm.
alikeness. And that to me is where I stay grounded. And that to me allows me to let go of the rat race and be like, I'm going to finish when I finish, and I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And that's going to be it. And that's going to be great. And I'm not going to allow the envy or the jealousy or the inadequacy that comes from scrolling on Instagram or going through social media, because it's social currency, right?
Mm.
All of those things are, it's so, likes have become a social currency for us. And why? Like we we go into these mediums for inspiration at the cost of our own self-worth. And it's just not worth it, you know. That's all I have to say about that.
I have goosebumps. I just thank you for sharing that. And, for you right now with that higher level of understanding of like sort of prioritization, like what is the measure for you of like, this is something worth pouring and investing into?
Yeah, I used to say this thing, and I'm allowed to change my mind, so that's fine. I used to say this thing where, and it's I don't, somebody else said it, but I must have seen it somewhere where it's like, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a hell no.
Hmm.
And, I don't necessarily, that worked for me for a little while, and then it didn't. Um, I think that for me, I practice everything that I do: meditation, mindfulness, yoga, um, all of these different practices are designed to cultivate more discernment, to know what to do when I'm not on the safety of my mat or the safety of
Mm.
my cushion. So, so then to me, that means, okay, I need to tune in, and I need to really understand what my intuition is. I need to understand what my heart is. I need to understand when that highest voice, that highest self is speaking directly to me, so that when those moments do arise of the, oh, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a hell no. Maybe it's a yes, tepid,
Mm.
it's a yes, like, it's kind of a yes, but I'm not really sure. You have to just tune in and look, when we are at the edge of a cliff, desiring to embark on something new, some new journey, some new adventure, it's always a little bit scary. But we practice these different modalities to learn how to tell the difference of, am I pushing myself off this cliff because everybody else is jumping, so I'm going to do it? Or am I at the edge of this cliff because I've worked my ass off and I've gotten myself here, and I know that the next step is for me to jump into this frigid water?
What have what have been like some of the scariest things for you to push yourself into that have been like the most rewarding or feeling like on purpose?
Huh. Wow. Well, I would say definitely getting into a relationship, because I was like not a 20 years old, and I did not want to be in a relationship. I'm like, I don't even like being in a relationship. I was 20, like I wanted to just have fun. So that was one that I, you know, clearly did, and it's served me up until this point. I would say that the next thing was quitting my job and starting my career, starting my business. That was very, very difficult and challenging thing to do, especially because I didn't come from entrepreneurs, family entrepreneurs. Like, I came from two immigrant parents that were terrified of me going to work for myself. They did not understand that. They're like, get a job and don't make waves and bury your head in the sand and be grateful, get insurance, um and I was like, not into that. I was like, no, I want to be happy. I'm passionate about this work, and I want to bring health and wellness to people, and I want to teach yoga, and I want to guide meditation, and I want to just talk about my experiences and how these modalities helped save my life ultimately. um so that was another. And I would say probably the most recent one was moving. I'm back in LA, but I did move to Portland a couple of years ago, and that was really interesting. Very, very um, visceral growth, uncomfortable, just like taking my warm blankie away from me experience, because I'd never lived anywhere else. I born and raised in LA. I basically I basically was born and raised, went to college, met my boyfriend, everything within an 8-mile radius of the hospital where I was born.
Wow.
So that was like the extent of my life. And I'm like, I'm in LA. This is the center of the universe. Why would I ever leave here? This is silly. But I was also feeling a little bit attached to my life. And I felt like I can't be teaching all of these things about letting go of attachment if I'm so attached to my life here. And so I did that. I took that plunge, you know, and it was during this time where Tori and I were having that like tenuous time. And
Mhm.
it was the best decision I'd ever made in my life. I learned so much from being uncomfortable. I learned so much from not knowing anyone, not knowing where I was, not you having to use I'm going to date myself, but you know, like the maps, Google Maps. No, what was the
Oh, yeah.
MapQuest?
Yeah,
No,
MapQuest.
MapQuest.
Yep.
Yeah. So having to use, I'd never had to use MapQuest to get home. Like that was strange to me that I was like, I'm in this new city. I don't know anybody. I have to go get groceries. Where do I live? Like, I don't know how to get back home. So, yeah, it was really, I love, one of my favorite things to do is to, I shouldn't say this. I don't want to invite the universe to bring more uncomfortable situations, but I feel like the more discomfort we're in our lives at times can be an opportunity for growth. And I do enjoy well, maybe that's just what I've convinced myself to tell myself, that I enjoy those moments. Maybe I don't, but like I've trained myself. It's like, no, you like this. This is fun. This is a place for you to get to grow and do something new.
Yeah, I honestly feel like the experiences that we have the most fear around lead to the biggest breakthroughs, you know, the most profound lessons about ourselves and growth experiences. So I love you
Yeah.
sharing that. You know, you mentioned that the methods that you teach saved your life. What do you mean by that?
Well, I grew up in a chaotic environment in the early 90s during the LA riots. It was gang riddled. It was just full of chaos, and I it was starting to kind of show its effects on me as I got older. You know, I had a really hard time. I had insomnia. I couldn't sleep. I was exhibiting signs of PTSD, and it was during this time I was on medication for anxiety that my mom ended up bringing home like some pamphlets to um, the Selfrealization Fellowship, and it talked about meditation as a way to, you know, calm anxiety or to deal with stress. And so I decided to go, and I took the bus. I ditched school one day, and I took the bus there, and I had my experience. I had a really incredibly deep, resonating, profound experience, which I detail in the book. So those of you listening, when the book comes out, you can read more about it. But it really paved the way to a different way of being and a different way of thinking. And it really reestablished my faith in the divine and God, space, Mother Nature, you know, whatever higher power you believe in. To me, in that moment, I realized, wow, like in order for me to connect to that, I need to go within. And so that's how I say it saved my life, because had it not, I don't know that I would have chosen to go down the path that I did in order to get to where I am now.
Yeah, what I mean, your story is so inspiring, and I'm curious for you, like in that environment, like what were there, like in addition to meditation and diving into that, like key people or experiences that were allowed you to expand your thinking in terms of your own potential?
Yeah, there was a lot of people in my life during that time that I look back now and I'm so incredibly grateful for. There was um, people I worked with, my bosses at the time, I was working at a hair salon, and they just really believed in me. And there was a couple, my English teacher in high school was always really encouraging of my writing and my creativity. And she was just, Dr. Higgins was her name. And she was incredibly um, important during that time for me. My older sister, she had recently started going to UCLA, and so I really still look up to her to this day. So there was people in my life that helped propel that movement forward. But it just, at the end of the day, like I say that because I know so many people, and even kids that I knew growing up. And when you grow up in a underprivileged neighborhood environment that don't have that, like that don't have those mentors or those people to look up to. And you find it a lot in communities of color,
Mm,
where it's very, very challenging to find those people or those programs. I mean, now I'm so grateful. Like, part of what propelled me to start teaching was I wanted to bring yoga and meditation to underprivileged communities like the one that I grew up in. That's
mm,
why I wanted to teach. And so now, I mean, there's so many different programs. I mean, even back where I grew up, like there's different, at-risk youth programs and activities that they can do now. But back then it was there's no funding for it, so it makes it really difficult for people, or for for young kids, especially so impressionable, to have access to the right type of mentors. um, so the reason why I said that, it's like I was very lucky, and I know how lucky I was for sure during that time, but not, I mean, a lot of my friends weren't. And I knew a lot of people that, were deep in the throes of addiction and alcoholism and gangs. And it was really hard to see. And still to this day, I'm sure people are still in that same environment and don't have the right guidance or have the right influences. I mean, for me, it's like all it took was, well, I don't want to say one thing, but I mean, the minute that I started to learn about meditation, I was like, ooh, the Beatles meditated. Like, who did they meditate with? And it was very, it was sort of like that helped continue my path, because I was also young, and you're a teenager and you're like, oh, the Beatles are cool. Like, I want to be like the Beatles, or whatever it is. So I think it takes a lot to create the container for kids like myself to to
um,
to have those inspiring people. But it doesn't have to be a person that you knew. It could always be like a band that you like, or somebody that you follow, type of thing.
absolutely. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, when we're growing up, we're so impressionable, and our circle makes such a powerful difference, and if we don't have those expanders, or if we don't have that access to what's possible, it can be really challenging. I mean, even like on a small scale of that, like not having an example for somebody in your family that's done the entrepreneurial route, it's like, how do I do this? Is this even possible? And I just love how you mentioned like being able to cultivate that inner reservoir within. I feel like that is a profound tool because, once we're able to develop that, it can grow exponentially.
Yeah, yes, and it's a practice to be able to develop that. And I just wish that more people, more teachers in schools would teach that, would teach the power of self-efficacy, would teach the power of taking agency within yourself, teach self-confidence, teach the ability to feel embodied, to feel connected, to cultivate the discernment. I know that there's so many programs now that cultivate mindfulness, and I see, all over the world, people teaching meditation and these different techniques, which are incredible. And I just wish that here in the US we would do more of it, I think we would be able to see a huge shift and a huge change if we taught compassion in school.
Oh my gosh, 1000%, you know, and I feel like right now, there's such an issue with mental health. And, you know, I definitely can relate to my own struggles and journey through that, like growing up, and the power of meditation and being able to find those tools to navigate through that, you know?
Yeah. Was that a question? You were just like, that was like perfect, like what you said, like that. I'm like, yes, I mean, there's so much that we can talk about on that, but I feel like one of the most important things in tools that we have is the most precious commodity, which is time, and learning how to manage it, and knowing that time is energy, and our energy can either be getting filled or it can be depleted.
Mm,
And depending on how much time you spend on social media, or how much time you spend in front of a TV, or how much time you spend doing something that's not going to serve your highest good, that's time that you're not getting back, you
yeah.
know?
What are the things that you're most excited to really commit your time to in the coming year?
Well, I think I laugh because I'm like, oh, I just really had this conversation the other day. I have to continually take stock of what I think is important, and not what my team thinks is important, or what my people think is important, or what my, people that are around me that are like, oh, you have to do X, Y, and Z for your career, or for this or for that. And I want to focus more on saying no. I mean, truly, like that's, and some people listening to this might feel like that's counterproductive. And I think that I don't agree with that. I think being counterproductive is going to produce a lot more than being overproductive in the long term.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. It's amazing how liberating it is to say no. It is something
Oh,
that like needs to be practiced, and like almost like a muscle that needs to be
mhm.
strengthened.
Oh yeah. Oh, we practice it in our food all the time with Tori, because Tori has a really hard time saying no. And I'm like, just say it into your oatmeal, like say no. And he'll be like, no. I'm like, see, it's so easy. It's so easy to just be like, no, see, done. And you could just do it, smile on your face, like, no. Uh. And yeah, it just feels really good to be able to take the power back, to take your power, your time, your energy back to you where it needs to be, so that you can cultivate that connection to the divine.
Mm, love that so much. Rosie, you're amazing. I love you and have enjoyed this conversation so much. Where can people go to learn more about you? Share with us when your book is coming out.
Oh, okay. Yes, please. You could go to radicallyloved.com, and you can go to Instagram at Rosie Acosta. And I mean, if you go to my website, all of the things are there. The book is slated to come out spring of 2022, so early next year, a year from now. And yeah, I mean, just stay in touch. Those of you listening, I'm just always so curious to hear what resonated with you, if anything did. And if you're interested in taking a training with me, I do teacher trainings. I certify people to become teachers. You can always just reach out to me directly through my website or on Instagram. And yeah, I'd really love to hear from you, and help you and be of service of any way.
Amazing. Well, we'll have to have you back on the show when your book comes out in 2022. And definitely check out Rosie's podcast, Radically Loved, if you haven't already, because it's amazing. Highly recommend. And thank you again.
Thank you.